to Northern Lights Canadian National Conservatory of Music Sharing Session on Piano Performance Examinations. The CNCM Piano Performance Examinations are offered as a full personal recital examination, including an encore. The performance examinations are similar to the CNCM Music for Everyone Star Performance in that students prepare a written program, prepare an oral presentation introducing each selected work. You're also assessed on performance etiquette and on repertoire selection. These performances also include an audience of family members, teacher, and friends to be invited by the student. Repertoire is own choice from any source. The one Canadian work must be from a Northern Lights CNCM publication. Please note that students are required to provide a second copy of all non-memorized works for the examiner. The piano performance examinations differ from the Music for Everyone Star Performance in that the performance is of 8 works rather than just 4. The 8 works must include an additional piece and an encore, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. It may be in a traditional period style or theme-based. Some memory is required for the performance examinations. The memory requirements start at grade 1, but for the introductory grade, which is the first grade to offer the piano performance examinations, memorization is recommended but not required. For grades 1 through 9, memory is required for any 3 works. At grade 10, memory is required for any 4 works. For associate and licentiate performance diplomas, memorization is mandatory. This is a chart that you can find in the current syllabus. This one is from page 20. We're looking at grade 1, although they're all pretty much the same. This is the overview of what would be required for a traditional style of examination. You would choose 1 Renaissance or Baroque piece, 1 Rococo or Classical piece, 1 Romantic piece, 1 20th or 21st century idioms piece, a Canadian piece, which is often a 20th or 20th century piece as well, a study from any period, what is known as our additional piece, and an encore. We can have some substitution without pre-approval in that list that we just looked at. This is found on page 14 of our syllabus. We all know that for early grades, romantic pieces are more limited for young students. And what we've created is an opportunity to have some substitution without pre-approval. At introductory through grade 4, students could have 2 stylistic pieces, meaning it can be a contemporary piece that is written in the style of a romantic piece. At least one of these works must be selected from our Northern Lights publications. The second one can be from any source. For grade 5 through grade 8, a maximum of 1 stylistic work from the Northern Lights publications can be substituted. Beginning at grade 9, there is no substitution in the style of piece. I want to chat just for a moment about what we mean by 20th and 21st century idioms works. These are not pieces that are just written in that time frame. They are pieces that use the unique idioms that were being experimented with throughout that period. So things like irregular meter or changing meter, but changing meter that's beyond like 2/4 to 4/4, more like 4/4 to 5/4, 4/4 to 3/4. Or it could be meterless. It could be atonal or any dissonant work. We also accept a true jazz style. So not just a little bluesy or kind of a rag. It needs to be a true blues, true rag style, boogie woogie, etc. We also accept modal works, although we all know that that's not new, but rather ancient, but was very popular during this time. So you could choose a work in any mode other than Aeolian or Ionian and have that accepted as well. It could also be an aleatoric work. The Canadian works, there must be at least one work selected from the Northern Lights CNCM publications, which now includes the Northern Lights Solos Pre-Reader to Grade 9, the Making Track series, Folk Songs series, the O Canada Collection, Dancing in the Northern Lights, which is a solo by Wes Froese, and it's in 2 versions, 2 degrees of difficulty. Another solo that we've recently published is called Farewell by Ernst Schneider. That's one of our first grade 10 Canadian solos to be offered. And coming soon, this is really exciting, we're today announcing our Seasons series, which will be launched in the summer of 2025. The additional work, and you can find this information on page 10 of the current syllabus, is a really fun aspect of what we do at CNCM. One of the goals we wanted to achieve, or messages we wanted to send, was that we believed that students should be working at different levels. To work only on all grade 8 pieces or all grade 5 pieces or all grade 3 pieces is very challenging, can be very discouraging for students. It also can limit the number of pieces that they're learning. We feel strongly that students should constantly be doing quick studies, yo-yo pieces, easier pieces to strengthen a style. So if they struggled with Baroque music, possibly they need to do more earlier level Baroque pieces. And the goal was bringing this into our program so that the message is there that we shouldn't be afraid to play pieces at a different level. And for the additional work, one of the choices would be that it could be another piano solo, which may be no more than 1 grade lower than the tested grade. So if the student is taking a grade 5 exam, they may choose a piece at grade 4 level. It could be an ensemble work, like a piano duet, trio, small chamber group. Could be, sometimes it's family groups, which is really exciting. Could be a vocal solo or a vocal duet. It may or may not be accompanied. Sometimes the student accompanies themselves, sometimes they have an accompanist. Could also be on a second instrument, violin, flute, clarinet, etc. Could be an original composition, but we need to have a completed copy to be given to the examiner, and the student must play from that written copy. It could also be a piano solo accompanied by a backing track, so developing collaborative music making again. Again, because it's a piano solo, it should be no more than 1 grade lower. The encore, we encourage students to find something that's short and attractive, big, fun ending. Students don't include this in their written program. Instead, they reserve it for a surprise. And when the encore is called for, then they immediately respond and talk about the piece that they're going to play. The encore must be no more than 2 grades lower than the tested grade. In fact, it could be higher, but you have to make sure that they handle it equally as well and that they stay within the allotted time frame. But it must be a piano solo. The theme examination has some tips for you. The first thing you're looking for is to make sure you include lots of contrast. Contrast in keys, meters, tempo, and style. The additional work and the encore must be part of the theme. It can't be some random piece. It needs to fit the theme as well, both of these pieces. We do have students coming with props and costumes, which is really fun. The one thing to remember is that they must be able to set up and remove all of their material within the allotted time. So ideas for theme exams. So this is one example, sonata performance examination. So in this case, the candidate would include examples of sonatas or sonatinas from the Baroque period through to the 21st century and include the Canadian content component. And in this case, you would encourage them to do various movements, which would now also be including various forms. If they did a jazz performance examination, they should include as many jazz styles as possible. So once again, ragtime, blues, swing, etc. And the Canadian component using the CNCM publications applies as well. Some students enjoy doing Canadian composer examinations. So they can choose a composer, and they need to demonstrate as many compositional styles as possible from various periods of the composer's life. Other ideas with this would be that they might select a single composer. They might actually create a whole historical examination with pieces that are in the style of. They could all be Canadian. They might select a group of composers, perhaps a group of women Canadian composers. They could also select composers from different provinces and territories. In general, there's so many ideas that they could come up with. It could be this whole historical idea of the Canadian content. Could be popular or rock selections. Could be sacred music, hymns. Could be a dance. So if it's a waltz, they're going to have to get really creative and make sure they cover many styles within that. Or it could be dances in general. It could be music from a particular country, or composers from around the world, or titles that include various locations, which can turn into a travelogue of sorts, a musical travelogue. Could be space travel, could be stars and the moon, could be seasons. Could be music using different types of imagery, like water pieces. So that might be creating activities, ocean sounds, sea sounds, rain, storms. Could be animals. This could be a whole collection of animals. Or it could be a whole group of dog pieces, cat pieces, horses pieces, wild animal pieces, imaginary animal pieces. Could be sports. Titles beginning with the same letter. So if this child's name was Sarah and it was Sarah Servan, for example, they might latch onto that letter S, and every piece within the program will be starting with the letter S, including the piece that started carried their name. Kids will be so creative, they will seek out their own titles. This will be so much fun. Some more things to be careful of when you're doing this now. Be careful that the levels work. When selecting these pieces, you don't necessarily have a syllabi that you can go to. So you need to make sure that the pieces don't become too difficult or too easy. Be sure the performance stays within the time allotment. Remember, even though it's a theme exam, one Canadian work must be selected from a CNCM publication. So this also limits sometimes the theme. If a child wants to do a Disney theme, they're still going to have to come up with some creative way to find a Canadian work from our publications that fits the theme. One of the things that's especially important and unique to CNCM is the length of our performance exams. Now this is the performance exam only, not the skills portion, which we call our musicianship exam. You'll see that the introductory is kind of standard at 10 minutes, but grades 1 and 2, 20 minutes. Grades 3 to 5, 25 minutes. Grades 6 to 8, 35 minutes. So we're moving into a true recital format here. Grade 9, 45 minutes. Grade 10, 50 minutes. So it's so valuable for students to come in and feel relaxed, calm down, don't feel like they have to rush from one piece to another, enjoy the feedback from the audience, and just have a really supportive, positive time. The way that we build our grades is we can have a student do the performance exam, which is 8 pieces. So if this is a grade 1 performance, they would also do the grade 1 musicianship. They can do those on the same time, or they can do them at different times. Or they can do a star performance and the popular, which is 4 and 5 pieces, and also do the musicianship exam and complete a grade 1 certificate. Remember that the performance exam will receive a certificate, the musicianship exam will receive a certificate, the star performance will receive a certificate, and the popular will receive a certificate. When the complete grade is completed, they will receive their grade 1 complete certificate. This information is on page 6 of our syllabus. The performance, or the star performance and popular exams, must be completed within 12 months of the musicianship examination to qualify for the complete grade. But there's something else that they could do here as well. If they did a performance exam and found that they were really getting strong in their musicianship and they were going to be holding themselves back doing the musicianship a little bit later, they can actually move into the next grade and do the next grade musicianship. As long as it's done within 12 months of the performance, they will still get a complete grade 1 certificate. So it's a way to do a little bit of fast tracking for students as well. We wouldn't encourage that for every grade, but certainly in the early stages, it might be something that children can achieve. Please reach out to us at any time if you're looking for the approval of the level of a piece. If you are unsure, one of the things we suggest is always look at what the technical requirements are, compare the piece you're looking at to other pieces at that grade level. That will help you a great deal. But if you need assistance with this, you just need to reach out, and hopefully within a few days we'll have been able to have done the research and get back to you with an answer. But we will get back to you. So please take advantage of that if that's helpful to you. So if we have any questions, happy to answer those now.
Lillian had a question in the chat that she's very new to CNCM and wondering if the PowerPoint for the slides will be available afterwards, or whether Ruth wants to take that question.
I can.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I'll send out the link to the recording when it's ready to go on YouTube. And with that, I will also send this document so you can go through it in more detail.
Yeah, because we didn't see the first number of slides. So I'm guessing that might be her concern.
And everything, Tenley, is in the handout.
Yes. Did everybody get that? All the teachers?
No, I was going to send that with
you're sending it with this.
With the link. But I can send it to Lillian right now because that's easy, and then she's got it.
Okay.
Fantastic. Are there any other questions?
Well, I just have a comment. I'd like to encourage students, teachers to mark the measures on the scores they're providing at exams, because it makes the examiner's job a lot easier. And the comments can be more specific if needed to help the candidate understand the assessment.
Thank you for that, Noreen. I don't know if that would be something that I would think of as a teacher, so I appreciate the adjudicator perspective for that. Does anyone else have any comments or questions?
Well, I have something maybe Debbie would like to comment on. If part of the exam is a duet or a trio, some sort of an ensemble, the marking of that particular selection, the grading is solely on the shoulders of the candidate, not the duet partner or the trio people.
Correct. The focus is on the candidate. Of course, ensemble is going to be commented on how well they stay together and how well they listen to get back together. That part will be commented on. But the focus is on the individual who is taking the examination.
Yep.
And just to kind of bounce off of that, Debbie, can you, or someone else, can you just speak to why include the additional work? The students are already preparing so many pieces for this performance exam. What was kind of the thought process? I think you touched on that a little bit, Debbie, but if you just speak to that a little bit more of why include another piece that they need to learn that's not necessarily on their instrument that they're getting graded on.
Yeah, the exact idea used the word hook. What makes our exams different? What makes them more user-friendly? And sometimes, not sometimes, lots of times, students are learning a second instrument and they love to be able to exhibit that. And again, it also speaks to the whole idea of broadening as a musician, collaborative music making, and just really having fun with your music in general. That was the real reason to allow the additional piece to be different. Of course, if they just want to play another solo, that's fine. It's perfectly fine. But the hope was that we bring another perspective to their education, encourage them to look at that, encourage them to share that they've been doing.
That's really neat. I love that. I know actually I did several of these performance exams, and it was actually always a lot of fun to prepare those ensembles. I did a family quartet one year because why not? Um, and it was just so great as a family of doing that. And just another question about that. Do those pieces need to be at the same level as the exam that they're currently taking? So if they're taking a grade 5 piano exam, do they also need to do a grade 5 additional work?
No, so the solo can be a grade 4. So we also would look at, okay, typically, even at grade 5, we would expect the ensemble to be slightly easier. So probably 4-ish, maybe 3, not much lower than that. Of course, if it's another instrument, again, it can be slightly lower. We're hoping again that it's not, oh, what am I going to play? And we get a recorder playing Twinkle Twinkle. It can't be a cop out, right? We don't set a grade for those because the hope is that, they're working top end and they come to their second instruments often much later than they did the piano. So it's a reasonable level and we really haven't experienced that where we felt that the child didn't put the same kind of effort into that piece. And of course, they often progress more quickly because they already have the reading skills when they learn their new instrument anyway, right? So it doesn't seem to be a challenge for that. And of course, if it's vocal, they probably are more than capable of doing the same level of vocal piece as already a trained musician, even though maybe it wasn't voice.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Tenley, are you trying to comment? You're muted.
I'm sorry. Debbie, there's a question in the chat asking about the difference between CNCM and RCM. I've directed them to the website.
Right. Is there a specific question in relationship to one thing?
Yeah, because there's so much. Maybe they can put that in the chat or just ask.
Yeah. I think the big difference is the input that the child has, the freedom that the child has, the length of the examinations for a very similar price. We've mentioned this before that our students tend to stay in our studios for years. And I think part of it is the ownership that they get with our program, because the level of pieces are the same. Sometimes the marks feel a little bit higher, but that's because we reward homework, as we've discussed previously with the idea of the written program and the oral presentation. So we mark a little bit differently. The actual performance marks are probably very similar to other schools, but there's just more creative, more family-oriented, because the families are attending, so they are observing what's happening, not being sent behind closed doors in an age when that could be really frightening for children.
And that is one of the big differences, is that our kids can do this for their loved ones. Like they invite their guests as opposed to one-on-one with no guests.
And music
and of course the open repertoire.
Right. And music is intended to be shared. And when we were launching CNCM, I can tell you that the idea was that we needed to be different, or what was the point? And we wanted children to be successful. We wanted them to have the support of the examiner and the family. You can just see a child melt and relax after that first performance. The first piece is played, and that applause comes back with mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, loving you regardless of how the performance went. And the personalities start to shine. They start to have a really good time. Kids leave these exams saying, next year for my recital, they don't even call them exams. Next year for my recital, I'm going to do this. And those are experiences we've all had from CNCM being different in those ways. There's many, many more differences. A little too long to just cite right now, but hopefully that gives you an idea of how it is different.
I think, again, speaking as someone who went through these exams, I did find that I had experience with exams from various schools, and with CNCM, I was looked at as an individual, and as I said, you wanted to support positive and welcoming and nurturing experience. And I really thrived in environment other than the music is the reason I'm here. It's like, oh, you are an individual who is here to music was my wasn't just music wasn't just legal. If that makes sense at all. I'm not sure if that came through, but it was just a very nurturing experience for me.
And further to the question now about for RCM, also the etudes, scales, sight reading, and so on, just to explain, this performance exam is separate from their musicianship. They can split these exams and do the musicianship, which includes all of the oral skills and, like you say, sight reading and transposition, harmonization, etc. So that's one-on-one with the examiner, the musicianship skills. I think we've had a session on that. So maybe to check out all of the videos that are up on YouTube, right, Ruth? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe we've done the musicianship. I think is one of the next ones.
It's the next session.
Yeah.
So come back.
Yeah. But I just wanted to say that they're separate. Like there's the performance exams, which are in front of an audience of the students choosing, but the musicianship is a separate exam.
Perfect. And we were talking a little bit about having an audience at the exam as well. Is there a limit to how many people can be invited? I don't know. What is your experience with that?
The facility actually dictates. So if it's a private studio, then the studio host gets to say how many can be invited. But if it's a large place, it's up to the student. We don't encourage people who are not personally invited to attend. We want the child to feel comfortable with who is invited. So they can have, if it's in a large facility, we have a center out west that is across from the school, and it's a small church directly across the road. The whole classroom comes to those performances, and it is absolutely amazing. The kids are so proud of their classmate, and it is just so supportive, and so it's like a great big hug in that little church because it's just full, and wonderful, wonderful experience.
That's so cool. I love that. Wow. Another question about the encore. A lot of my questions today are about the additional work in the encore, just because those are kind of the prominent new things in the full performance exam. Um, if it's not listed on the program, how do we start that? Do we just start playing it right after the last piece? How does that get started?
Yeah. So it's the examiner's job and the teacher's job to start shouting, encore, encore. And then, of course, the whole audience joins in, and the children are expecting that. So then they do a shorter introduction to that piece, generally speaking. And I mean, they just beam at that moment because they're having so much fun. And but it is generated by both the teacher and the examiner. So they're watching for that last piece to come, and they start shouting, and the audience immediately embraces it. And so they have that, there's that they're waiting for to cue them on that.
I've had the experience where candidates have practiced at home the whole program, so the parents are already on board for calling for the encore too.
That makes sense. Thank you. Another question about the additional work, I believe. One of the options is that you can do an original composition. Does that need to be on a beautiful computer-generated score, or does a neatly handwritten score suffice as well if the student doesn't have access to a computer program?
It can definitely be handwritten. Neatly is the key word there. It needs to look, well presented in a way that it's easy for the examiner to read. And I can't emphasize enough, the child needs to be playing what's on that page. Because it's part of how are they interpreting the score, right? So their composition should also be edited with dynamics and phrasing, articulation, all of those things. So it should be a finished score that the examiner receives, whether it's handwritten or computer generated. Both are fine.
Perfect.
There's another question here about the difference between performance, the 8 pieces, and the star performance and popular 4 pieces. Ruth, we have that up already, do we, about the star performance? Has that been done?
Yep, we did do those.
Yeah.
Ready and have them up and posted.
Okay, so those are already posted.
I think both of those, there's one on star performance and one on popular performance. So if you check those out, hopefully that will answer some of those questions.
And if it's still unclear, then contact the office for further support.
Yeah, and I think, we're happy to do one-on-one sessions too, if you feel you have a lot of questions and it's just quicker to engage with one or two of us at the same time. Just ask for a session and we can do that for you as well.
Perfect. All right. I think that's all of the questions I have. Does anyone else have anything to add or anything to ask about this or about any other questions that may have popped in your head?
Yeah, and Cheryl was just mentioning there to reminding everyone that the syllabus is a free download on our website. So
I have a quick question about a grade 9 performance exam. When it says no substitutions available, can you clarify that for me?
that is part of in the style of pieces that
Oh, okay.
so the Baroque piece has to be a true Baroque piece. And the classical piece has to be a true classical piece rather than an in the style of from the Northern Lights publications.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Amazing. Thank you for that question. Does anyone else have anything for today?
Great job, Debbie.
Thank you.
This is always very helpful. Thank you so much to everyone who came today. We look forward to seeing you next time with, I think Noreen will be talking on the musicianship requirements for exams. So stay tuned for another riveting webinar session. All right. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming.